Walk on into the admin room where you're going to meet this guy. Welcome to Rayalightknits, and today I will be showing you how to loom knit in Among Us, Crewmate, or Imposter. Let's get started. For the giant version of this plushie, you will need a 41 peg loom and looming hook. Next, you'll need some super bulky yarn of your choice. My absolute favorite yarn for stuffed animals is Loops and Threads Sweet Snuggles yarn. Originally, I wanted to get pink or red for Valentine's Day, but they were sold out. However, I found my favorite color, which is teal, so my crewmate will be cyan. Let me know in the comments what color you did or are wanting to choose for this project. This yarn is a super bulky number 7, and it's extremely soft. I would only recommend this yarn for plushies for this reason, but keep that in mind if you are using the same kind of yarn I am. I bought 3 skeins, 2 in the teal color and 1 in white, because we need some white for the face shield. Then you will need scissors, a yarn needle for sewing, an optional measuring tape, and a crochet hook, which is also optional. Finally, you need some stuffing. If you have a bunch of yarn scraps too, they make good mock stuffing. Start by making a slip knot or tying a knot to your side peg. Then take your yarn in between the first and last pegs of the loom and zigzag in between each peg side to side, in and out. Do this all the way around the loom. Reach over to the first peg again and lay the yarn flat against the pegs in a circle like this. This cast on is called the drawstring cast on, and it creates places where we can easily close the project up by pulling the yarn tight. When you reach peg 40, brace the yarn in a U behind the peg and lift the bottom loop over the top loop with your hook. Then go ahead and lift all the rest of the bottom loops on every other peg. Some of the pegs will have 1 loop and others will have 2 loops, which you can lift. As you reach the right side again, you'll notice the last peg has no loop. Ignore it and lay your yarn over it to start knitting your first row. Wrap your working yarn back to front around each peg in a circular manner. This is called the E-wrap stitch, and I love using it because it's faster and makes the biggest projects. If you're using lighter yarn though, there might be obvious spaces between the stitches, so you probably have to use heavier yarn or a different close-fitting stitch like the U-wrap or flat knit. When you reach the last peg, lift its bottom loop over the top and work backwards to secure each loop as you go. After you complete lifting the loops, row 1 is finished. Repeat E-wrapping and lifting the bottom loops again to make another row. Keep knitting like this for your desired body length. Mine measured about 8 to 9 inches when I was finished, so knit what you think looks best for your project. Among Us characters have slightly longer legs than the body, so if you want to be technical, knit the length I did. Meet me back here when you completed the body portion. Okay, I need to explain what happened to me here. Just sitting there. Anyway, the character's head is what we started with. I was cinching up the drawstring after I knitted some length and the yarn snapped. Of course, I did this off camera. Anyway, if you use this yarn also, don't freak out. It's insanely delicate when you pull on it. So what I did was quickly thread some new yarn onto my yarn needle and tried to catch all the loops before they dropped. I don't have footage from when I did that because, again, this all happened behind the scenes. Then I just tied a knot closed and sealed any gaps I could. That's why I have 2 very significant knots here. If this ever happens to you, just recover the loops and know that we're turning the project inside out anyway, so you won't even know the knots are there. Now for the legs. We're going to start working flat temporarily. Before we do, go ahead and mark between peg 20 and peg 21 with a piece of tape or stitch marker. I used washi tape. I did this to remind myself where to stop knitting because we're now dividing the loom in half to work each leg. Pick up the working yarn and E-wrap 20 pegs like normal. Stop at peg 20 right before you pass the washi tape. Lift the bottom loops over the tops, then push all the stitches on this side down. Turn around on the 20th peg and E-wrap to the left. I also skipped the first peg of each row. Every single row, I would only really E-wrap 19 pegs by skipping the first peg starting each flat row. This makes a nice braided edge for you, so I'd highly suggest using it that way because it will make the legs a lot easier. In total, I knitted 20 rows exactly for this leg. I would suggest going by rows with at least 15 rows or more, and don't measure it just because you might not get an exact measurement on both legs. And I'll meet you back here when you're finished. When you complete your 20 rows, you should have ended up on the left side or beginning side of the loom. Take the working yarn and lay it over each peg up to 20. Then lay the yarn a little further past the stopping point. Snip it with your scissors and thread the end with a yarn needle. We're now doing a drawstring cast off flat. If you want to use the hook to do this, you can, but since the yarn I'm using is super delicate, I went with using a yarn needle. Take the needle up through the bottom of the stitch and thread it through completely. Proceed with the other pegs in this manner until 20 has been secured. Lastly, pop off all of the threaded loops with a looming hook. Then you can also pull the bottom of the drawstring completely closed and it will form the bottom of your first foot. Now you have 20 empty pegs on this side, but your yarn is no longer attached to the loom. So make a slip knot or knot and tighten it onto peg 21. Now E-wrap all the rest of the pegs until you reach 41. Lift the bottom loops over the top loops, including the first peg we put the slip knot on. Keep knitting back and forth the same way I showed you from the other side until 20 rows have been finished. Repeat the cast off technique. Then pull up so the project can fall through. And there's the main body of your crewmate. Now you have the shell of the crewmate, so this is where a lot of sewing time and stuffing time is going to happen, but don't worry, it's a very easy process. It just can be the most time consuming of this project. So what I usually like to do is I start sewing up one side of the leg, and I don't have a particular way I sew. I just try to aim for that braided edge and go through the 2 bottom loops and the 2 top loops, and I just keep going round in a circle kind of manner and make sure I'm sealing up everything normally. Then when I I start getting a little bit down to the other side or the leg, I will start actually stuffing. So you can use stuffing or yarn scraps, but make sure that you spend a lot of time stuffing. I know it can be a really time-consuming process, but stuffing a stuffed animal is very important because it has a lot to do with shaping. If you want your crewmate to stand up, you need to shape it the way that you would be able to stand it up. So make sure you do take some time to stuff, and you're going to need a good amount of stuffing, a lot more than you think you'll need, but it's definitely worth it. And I stuffed as much as I possibly could until I could barely fit anything in. And then on one side of the plushie, I actually made it kind of flat. Now, originally I didn't do it on purpose. Now I think it's a great idea because you want to make sure that you have kind of a flat piece to knit the backpack on. I call it a backpack. I think it's like an oxygen tank or something, but that little piece that juts out from the crewmate, that's a great place to sew it on since it's so flat and not as rounded. So make sure you kind of steer away stuffing too much on the back side. Just work through your stitches as slowly as you can and take your time and enjoy this part as much as possible because it's actually a really relaxing part and it's great to listen to some music. While I was filming this video, I had my Spotify going and everything, so it's a lot of fun and very stress relieving and all of those things that I really like about loom knitting. When you are finished, you are going to have the shell completely sealed up, and the last thing I do is I just make a double knot through the fabric like this. Then I will hide the loops into the fabric, and there you go. You have the shell of your crewmate. I call it the shell, but it's like the body slash legs. Next week, I will be releasing the video on how to do the embellishments. So this includes the face shield and then the backpack. I call it the backpack. Again, it is, I think, the oxygen tank. I don't know, like somebody in the comments go down below and specifically tell me what it's called. I just call it the backpack. Anyway, you know what I mean if you're an Among Us fan. And I will be releasing that video next week. Spend this week finishing up this project and sewing up and having some fun, and next week I will be back with that video. If you liked this video, please don't forget to subscribe. I really appreciate all my new subscribers. If you have any friends or family members who would appreciate watching this content, please don't forget to share with them, and I'll see you next Friday. Rayalightknits out!